Alright, YouTube, time for another eBay rescue. Got this Saturn for $13.50. I offered $13.50 from his asking price of $18. And that's one thing about eBay, don't be afraid to throw an offer through these guys. And shipping was 13 bucks, so total $26.50. Description was for parts only, not powering on. So let's see what's wrong with this. Something's rattling in here. Not a good sign. Also, that's one thing about US sellers, man. Sometimes they don't give a crap. They didn't even use bubble wrap. Unfreaking believable. Another bad sign is this. The power button is recessed here. At least the cover is still here. Let's go and take out the battery.
You're watching the Sega Holic.
If you guys don't know by now, 5 screws for the Saturn 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And if you guys watched my other videos, you guys know I like to keep the screws in the same locations. For the model ones, pull from this side. There should be a catch right here. What the hell is this? Interestingly enough, what was rattling inside was the screw and also a gear here. It's funny because the only gear in here is for the CD assembly. The laser assembly does work as far as the gearing goes. And then this screw actually supposed to go here to hold on the power supply. Now since this wasn't working or wasn't powering on, there's probably something wrong with this power supply. There is a fuse back here. We can test out continuity. And another thing with this is, and you'll probably see this with some other used Saturns, is they tape down the door switch. So this keeps the Saturn on, or this fools the Saturn into thinking the door lid is closed. Another thing is, I don't think the previous owner actually tore this down. You can see the tape for the ribbon here still intact. You'll see it lift like this. This is not uncommon. This tape here too is to cover this hole here. So on these 64-pin Saturns, you can see the 64-pin IC here on the CD board. You'll see this type of crimp ribbon and also some anti-static tape covering the hole. Yeah, so it seems like the previous owner did not do anything beyond taping down the door switch button here. This actually looks excellent, and we'll go ahead and troubleshoot the power board here. Okay, got the digital multimeter out, or DMM, and we'll put this to this continuity mode, where you get a beep if there's continuity. Okay, so we're gonna check for continuity across that fuse, and again, if this was good, this would be beeping, and this is open. Then check your multimeter. This fuse is definitely open, and just looking at the fuse, you can see the fuse is burnt out. It's all dark on the inside of the glass, so we'll have to replace that. But before we replace it, we'll have to see why that fuse opened. Some other observations: this controller port here is loose. I noticed the screw here is not screwed all the way down, so this must have been tampered with. We'll just have to see once we get everything apart. To take out the power supply, there's the 2 screws here, which I already have off, and then just pull up from the 5 prongs here. pull from underneath the board. And also there's a clip there. I want to disengage the clip and obviously take out the switch connector. Just looking at the power supply here, all the components look pretty good. I don't see any burnt components. And again, we're trying to determine what opened the fuse. Pretty much searching for burnt components or any type of shorts somewhere. One other place to look is the switch here. Before opening up the Saturn, the switch was kind of low. I can see why it's low because looks like it has disengaged from the frame. Yeah, the switch looks broken. You can see here whatever is supposed to be holding the this metal piece to the frame itself is broken off. And let's just see if this power switch is actually working. Again, we're gonna do a continuity test. We're gonna obviously close the switch and see if there's continuity between these 2 points here. There is. And I turned it off and there should be no continuity. It's good. Weird. There's no continuity. Here's the problem. This thing is just falling apart. I actually got the power switch back together. It looks like the previous person tried to take it apart. This bottom tab here was opened. I reclosed it and make sure this is working properly. And we'll just do a continuity test right at the connectors here. Put your multimeter to your continuity tester mode where it beeps on a short. And just plug your 2 leads into the back side of the connector. Looks good. Now I'll just remount the switch. Now let's see if the height of the power switch is going to be okay. Oh yeah, much better. It's not recessed anymore. I did a re-inspection of the power supply board, and you can see VR101 has blown. You can see it's split open right there. Note the scorch marks on the surrounding components. This is probably why the fuse blew. I googled Sega Saturn VR101 because this component here looks like a disc capacitor, but obviously there is no capacitance ratings or farad ratings on the component. When I googled VR101 Sega Saturn, it pulled up a fellow video game repair YouTube guy, Luke Morse. He was repairing a Japanese Sega Saturn power supply. According to Luke Morse, the component is actually a varistor. I found various data sheets on these varistors. You can see this one is labeled 221E5N. The 221 refers to the voltage rating of the varistor. The 1 refers to the number of zeros after the first 2 numbers. So you would have a 22-0 or 220 volt varistor. The E5N, I'm not sure what that is exactly, but that 5 in the middle refers to the size of this varistor, which is a 5mm varistor. What Luke Morse had on his Japanese power supply was a 05 Delta 221 kilo. The 05 again refers to the diameter of the varistor, which is 5mm. The D probably refers to a disc type varistor, which this is. And again, the 221 is the voltage rating. The 1 signifies the number of zeros after the first 2 numbers. So you have 220 or 220 volt varistor, and that last letter K is the tolerance of the 220 volts, which is plus or minus 10%. You might also notice here too on the power supply, this one has the fuse ratings, which is the 125 volts, 1.6 amp. This is a 5 by 20mm fuse. The L and N you see there are AC terms or alternating current terms referring to your outlet or the mains. If you put your leads across these 2 points, there and there, it should read 120 volt AC. I ordered a varistor, some clips to hold on the new fuse, and new fuses. I ordered the components from Mauser, who I've used before for one of my darts machines, and this just came in the mail today. This is the fuse holder clips, so in case the fuse blows the next time, you can easily pull it off without desoldering the fuse. Here's the new varistors. This is a Panasonic brand, and these are the new fuses. These fuse clips are made for 20 by 5 millimeter fuses. This is a Schroeder brand. Again, these are Panasonic branded varistors, 220 volts, 600 amp varistors. Again, the fuse is a 20 by 5 millimeter fuse.
You're watching the Sega Holic.
Even good guys blow it.
So what we're gonna do now is remove the fuse and the varistor with a solder sucker. This is a shitty solder sucker. You can buy one of these at Radio Shack for about, I think, $20. When you use this, what you want to do is squeeze the bulb, then let it heat up. If you heat it up and you squeeze the bulb and you immediately try to put this on the solder joint, the air coming out from the bulb is going to cool down the tip. So you want to press down on the bulb before applying this to the solder joint. Sorry, but I accidentally did not press record. I already got the fuse off, but for the varistor, which is these two right here, we're gonna have to add some more solder to those 2 points because there's not sufficient solder for the solder sucker to work. Again, when using the solder sucker, slowly press on the bulb. You don't want a ton of air escaping and cooling down the tip. And make sure you squeeze the bulb with the tip facing away from you because sometimes some hot solder might come flying out of the tip. Before soldering on the components, we want to clean this area off with some alcohol. And if you want to, you can further clean this down using a solder wick to get the remaining solder off of the through holes. Here's a look at the fuse clips that we're going to be soldering onto the board. Again, we're going to be using these clips, so next time the fuse breaks, replacing the fuse is going to be a lot easier without having to desolder the fuse off. But you can see here, this tab on one side. When you solder this on, make sure this tab is on the outside, like so. And you have this one with the tab on the outside like that. So that tab won't inhibit the fuse from inserting properly. We just need to remove the ends from the legs. So just use your diagonal pliers and snip it off. I am going to pre-install the fuse on the clips to make this soldering job a little bit easier. And use some tape to keep the holder in place while I solder. I'm going to use some flux here so the solder can flow a bit more freely. It really doesn't matter which way the varistor goes. For the varistor, you can slightly bend the legs outward to keep it in place. Okay, once everything is soldered in place, you can go ahead and snip off the legs. And when you're done snipping, clean the area from that flux residue. Okay, here's a look at the rework area. We soldered here, 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 and here. This is for the fuse holder. And these two are the varistors. Now, the secret to good soldering is good equipment. So if you can, get an ESD safe electronically controlled soldering iron. The soldering iron heats up in less than a minute and you can get them really cheap at Amazon. I think you can pick them up in the $50 to $75 range. And here's a look at the components. Here's the fuse holder and the varistor. Again, if this fuse ever blows again, you can easily pull the fuse off and replace it without desoldering. With the power supply presumably fixed, hopefully none of the other components was compromised when the varistor blew. We can go ahead and take off the tape here on the door switch. Again, this is usually tape because it was using the disc swap trick to play backups. Now we can see if the power supply actually powers the unit up. Hopefully this works. Cross our fingers again. Right on. It was the varistor and the fuse. You can see here the pickup is trying to read a disc. Okay, we got the Saturn hooked up to the frame meister with Virtua Fighter loaded up. Let's see if this works. Okay, at least it's outputting some video. It's good. Looks like the console is working. The joypad responds, and what we have to do now is do a full teardown and do some cleaning.
Better run home to Mama now.
Now I'm just gonna clean this off with some laundry detergent. This is actually removable. Notice it has some double-sided tape on both ends, which makes it difficult to remove. Okay, once all the screws are out, this upper shield can come off. Okay, before we take off the upper shield, we have to take off the ribbon cable going to the control port. Now we can lift the whole motherboard out. Bottom shield looks to be in excellent condition. Normally the really bad Saturns, this would be really rusted. Okay, you can see that last screw didn't screw in real good because looks like the previous person did take this apart. Here's the long screw, which should go in here and here. So we just have to take this back out and search for that other long screw. Here it is. That other long screw was actually the loose screw that was in here originally, that was flopping around. 2 long screws on the back side. Short screw for the power supply. And this would take a regular screw. Same sizes with these that was here. And also the 2 fronts. Now if the screws were too long, they would be sticking out of the bottom. This is perfect. And we'll just do one final test.
Better run home to mama now.
You're watching the Sega Holic.
Here's the unit. Obviously it's tested out. Everything works. Happy to say. And here it is. Looking 1,000 times better. Okay, for comparison's sake, let's take a look at the 64-pin Hitachi Saturn. This is actually an MMP-1-2 second generation Model 1. See, the layout is the same. They always have this tape here covering that hole. The power board seems to be exactly the same with the US version. You can see the fuse is a through hole type and it's soldered directly onto the board. Same type varistor as the US version. All in all, very similar to the US spec 64-pin Sega Saturn. Here we have a second generation Model 1 Victor Saturn or JVC Saturn. You might notice this one is pretty unique as far as Model 1 Saturns go because of this non-glossy front here. Okay, and you can see again, like I said with the American version, the tape tends to lift here. And you can see pretty much the same as with the Hitachi Saturn and with the obviously the 64-pin version of both. Power supply remains very similar. You can see again the through hole fuse, the same varistor at VR101. All in all, pretty much the same thing. This is another Model 1 64-pin Saturn. And you can see here, again, similar to the US version, but again, a slightly different power supply board. You can see the through hole fuse and also the varistor here, slightly different location. And the thing about this power supply, sometimes for whatever reason, this logo here is blacked out along with this whatever component that would have been. That is really common with some power supplies from Japan. Also notice again the tape that's covering the hole. Here we have a Model 2 64-pin Saturn. Obviously this is a Japanese Saturn. And you can see here, very similar to the Model 1 64-pin. except for the power board. You can see now it sports a clipped fuse, so you can easily remove the fuse if it opens. Power supply is a little bit different, but all in all pretty much the same, except for this power switch here. Also note that the rod sticking up from the control port is now on the upper frame, making it easier to put the cover on. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe. I would truly appreciate it, and show me some support, man. I'll be seeing you guys next week with some more videos.